Salvador. Most of us know him as Chava. Would you come this morning, Brother Salvador? Share with us what God is doing in your life. And you have your mic, right? Yeah, okay.
There we go. I asked Sister Rosa if she would interpret for me so that I can have some time to think about what I want to say, but she said no. She interpreted for me in the Spanish service, so I want to thank you wherever you're at, Sister Rosa. So first, if this is your first time here, I would like to invite you back to New Hope to hear our pastor speak. He's a wonderful pastor, does a good job up here. And also, Pastor Rigo, I want to thank you again for the honor to come up here and speak. It's such a privilege to preach on the stage where I received salvation and where my spiritual grandpa and my spiritual father, preach it. But I was the average person when they have a big event coming their way. The average person, what they do is they make it a goal to lose weight, right? So that they can look good, whether it's a wedding or a quinceañera. Well, I'm talking to the girls now. Whether it's forgive me, but a big event. I'm just going to go with that one. It's a big event. And so when Pastor Rigo asked me to speak, I made it a personal goal to lose some weight before I came up here. And when I heard I was going to Mexico, I was like, definitely, man, I'm gonna lose some weight for sure, And, I found out pretty quickly that working with Brother Justo in Mexico, you intake a lot of calories, so it had the opposite effect of what I really wanted it to have. But I had a great time in Mexico. For 10 years, I've been hearing Pastor Justo talk about the soup kitchen and the dumps, and to be able to participate in his ministry, it was such a blessing, and he's doing a good job there. And also, there's a young lady in our church. She comes in the Spanish service. Her name's Michelle Delgado. She's also launching this August onto the world race. So just keep her in your prayer. And, from my experience, the best way you can support is honestly through your prayers and through finances. It takes a lot of humility to be up here and for me personally. So, today I want to talk about my world race experience, but before I do that, I kind of want to share my testimony. I've talked to people, and I've had conversations with people, and they think that where they're at, God can't use them. And so I want to share my testimony because who I am today wasn't who I was yesterday or the years, my past. So I want to read this quote real quick. It's by C.S. Lewis. You guys maybe have heard. You guys probably have heard it. It says, "Friendship is born at the moment when one man says to another, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" Have y'all heard that? So this is why I like sharing my testimony. It gives glory to God, and it shows how real God is to another person. And I believe that every one of you has a beautiful story, and I believe that you can use your story to lead someone to Jesus Christ. And also, like the quote says, it opens up doors for relationships, to build friendships. But today I want to, as I said, I want to share my testimony. But before I do, I just want to say that I do love my mother. And, I love her with all of my heart. And, what I'm going to share isn't to make her look bad. We just went through a lot of stuff. And also, same with my father. I love the guy. He supports me. He's still supporting me. And our relationship is pretty strong. Thanks to God, let me tell you that on March 8th, 1993, an adorable, cute baby was born that year. The world was never the same after he was born. And his name is Salvador. But he's not cute and adorable anymore. He's just handsome, right? No. Thanks, Pastor. Little advertisement. But 4 years after I was born, my mother, and my father, they had conflicts, so they separated, and my mother and I, we were homeless for a number of years, and I remember, staying at the Guadalupe centers, eating salvation from the Salvation Army, and I remember, just living with different family members, and and people tell me, wow, like you lived a hard life, but in the moment, still, I don't think it was hard. It was normal for me. I didn't have anything to compare it to. And let me continue. Education wasn't a priority to me. I didn't care about education. I didn't really apply myself, and it's catching up to me, to be honest with you. I wish I have applied myself a little bit more, and I thought, living off of the government assistance, this was my dream, was living off government assistance for the rest of my life, have like a family, I had no future. And if I graduated, that would be cool, but if I didn't, then I'd be cool with that too. I'd be happy with McDonald's. This was my mindset when I was a kid. And, continuing, I never shared this part of my story. This is the second, last service was my first time. This is my second time sharing, that God delivered me from being sexually abused. And, I thank God that it didn't happen, but it came very close to happening. I don't know why, but I felt the Lord telling me that I had to share that part of my testimony. But at the age of 8, I was introduced to drugs, alcohol, gangs. I was a thief, and I practiced this until February 9, 2006 is when I gave my life to Jesus Christ at this very altar. So after that, I got very heavily involved in ministry. I found myself, I was in a season where I was here at New Hope for like 6 days a week, participating on whatever they had. I just loved being here at New Hope, and I still do. Okay, and I loved it so much that I graduated high school here and I graduated college here. Yes. So it took me 8 years to get to where I was at in 2013. My dreams were coming true. I was a staff member here at New Hope. I worked alongside an amazing team. Our pastors were constantly investing into us, and I was doing the youth ministry and the media ministry, and I found myself replacing my relationship with God with the ministry I was doing, and eventually that started to catch up, and I started to feel myself burn out, and and then on top of that year, 2013, is when my grandma passed away and from cancer, and that just did it for me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. The answer was obvious to your pastors but at the time I didn't think of it, and the enemy creeped in, and he was giving me these lies like, just go. You don't need it, just go, run away. You don't need God anymore. You don't need this. And so I did. Saturday night, I packed my stuff and I left. And I want to formally apologize to every one of you for that action that took place. And if I hurt you, I also want to ask for forgiveness. But this is a great example of what happens when you stop connecting yourself to the source. It's also a good reminder of, it doesn't matter what your title is in life. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor, a missionary, a millionaire, a business owner. It doesn't matter what your title is. You're not exempt from sin. You're not exempt from temptation. You're not exempt from this world. And, I learned that. But I rededicated my life May 2015 after having a conversation with Pastor Melody in the dorm. I was getting ready to move out, and she sat down and she shared her heart, and she got emotional, and why are you guys laughing? She shared her heart, and it made me realize how much the church and herself, how much they care about me, and that I wasn't just another number in the pew or in the seat, and I wasn't just another volunteer, and I wasn't just another number in the college. Like, they really cared about me. And I was, like I said, I was eating the lies of the enemy, saying like, yeah, you're just here, you're not doing anything. And so after that, I, rededicated my life to Jesus. And that summer, that changed my perspective in my life. And that summer, I was introduced to the World Race, again, by Pastor Melody. And, I signed up. And let me be honest with you, in my adult years, I've never been so financially vulnerable as I was when I joined the World Race. So I had to raise $10,000 before we launched. We launched January 3rd. And I think I got accepted like late October. And then we started fundraising maybe a little after November. So so in 1 month and a half, a week before we launched, we raised $11,400 as a church. So I would like to thank every one of you who bought, who prayed, who made, and who sold, and who gave to this to make this happen, to allow me to go. And as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, what you did, it echoes into eternity. Okay, so that happened, and then I was able to launch. And the question that I get now is, how many? People ask me all the time, what is the craziest thing that you ate? So I have a couple of photos of the things I ate. So fried frog, it tastes like chicharrones, if you guys want to know. All it needed was Valentina and some corn tortillas. Anyway, a tarantula, that would taste like a hairy piece of chicken. And then, okay, let me tell you a little something. So in Indonesia, they have, I believe it's the most expensive coffee in the world. And the way it works is they feed this animal, it's called a luwak. They feed it the coffee beans, and then after it digests, it like poops it out. And then they grab it, and then they do whatever they do, and then make coffee out of it. So this is how it looks after it's exited its stomach. So I was having some American cravings, for candy. And when I first saw that, I thought of a payday. So those were some crazy things that I ate. Let me share with you a little bit, what God is doing around the world. When we launched in January, we went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and there they have a cafe called Zion Cafe, and it was one of the ministries that stuck out to me. There's a photo that we have of the staff members there at Zion. It's a little crooked, but the majority of the staff that worked there, they were former prostitutes, and they worked in the sex trafficking industry. And so what they do is Emmy, she's the person who runs she's the girl with the arms crossed. What she does is she sends teams out in the day to go and do some prayer walking along the bars to prepare the soil, and then at night she sends a group of women to go and minister to the women, to the prostitutes, to the ladies in that industry. And these ladies, when they come out they don't come out to socialize, they don't come out to talk, they don't come out to make friends, they come out to make money. So one way to get to be able to speak with them and witness to them, you have to buy their time. And there was this bar there that didn't allow the women, the team, to go and speak with the women there at their bar. But after 4 years of doing prayer walking, this year they allowed them to interact with the women there. So that's awesome. This year I learned that prayer does work. There's a lot of power in prayer. It does make a big difference. But not only do they take them, they don't just offer them salvation, but they also attempt to provide them a job there at the cafe because they're out there to make money. So what Emmy does and the Zion Cafe is they bring them out and they give them a job so that they can have some type of income. So that's pretty awesome. And then another one of my favorite ministries was in Swaziland with Adventures and Missions and Chest of Children Hope Chest. And what they do is, I have some photos as well, is they have these care points. They have these care points where they set them up in rural areas where it's needed, and they feed the children there in the village. And yeah, here's some photos. I loved Africa, man. It was my favorite. So they feed them at least once a day, and some of these children, this is the only meal that they get, you know. And the reason why it's my favorite ministry is because they don't just feed them, but they train them in the ways of the Lord. And when they get to a point of understanding, you know, like the high school years, they mentor them. And when they graduate high school, they take them in and they enable them to work. They teach them how to lead. They teach them how to work. And it's a 3-year program where they just invest into these people and to the people who come out of these care points. And then what they do is they send them back into the villages. That's a really cool picture. They send them back into the villages to pay it forward. It's awesome because they teach them at a young age how to work. So these kids, they're carrying sticks, and every day they have to bring a stick in order to eat. That's their pay, you know, so that they could keep the fire going and, you know, make their jobs a lot easier and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I thought that was neat. Teach them how to work. Another ministry we're familiar with is the Christian Operation Shoebox. Yes, this. So what this ministry does is you get the box, you fill it up with gifts, and you send them out to the kids around the world. And in Cambodia, I remember seeing a box. One of the little girls, we were working with an orphanage, and one of the little girls brought me the box and gave me a letter and a photo. And I started to read the letter, and I thought to myself, Amber is a 15-year-old young lady who sacrificed her own pleasures and her own desires to invest into this ministry. And I started to think to myself, what if I gave up what I wanted and I invested into one of these boxes? You know, what this picture that I'm seeing, would that have been my picture? This letter that I'm reading, would that have been mine? Honestly, I would never know because I didn't do it. But my point here is that, you know, I allowed my addiction to buy technology, to buy you know, food, and to spend my money on just worthless things. I allowed that to stop me from being a part of what God is doing around the world, you know. And here at New Hope, we have that opportunity all the time, you know, to invest in people's lives. One of my highlights was Speed the Light. There was this man I met in Macedonia, and he was a missionary there in Macedonia, and he's a part of the Assemblies of God. Have you guys heard of Speed the Light? Yeah, have you guys heard of BGMC? This is the family. You know, I talked to them, and one of the first things I asked him was, did Speed the Light buy you guys a vehicle? And he said, yes. I mean, I was so excited. We went to go check it out, and this was the vehicle. It was like that. I took photos, but it was too dark, so I had to take that from Google. But it was like that, black. But I mean, I guess I'm here. I just want to remind you that, you know, like the money that you do give, it really is leaving an impact. And for a long time, it was really hard for me to understand that. And it's kind of sad that I had to, like, go around the world to see, like, the impact. But my life has changed, and I'm going to start giving. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how faithful God has been in my life, and the things that He, you know, God has always provided for me. But my problem is I make explanations for those blessings. And for example, like if I'm sick and my back is hurting or something, and I have somebody pray for it, but then I take medicine, I'm like, oh, it was the medicine. That medicine's good. I recommend it. You know, uh, or I always make explanations like, oh, I was here at the right time, right place, and so that's why I got it. But let me tell you, it was in Indonesia is when there was no explanation. God was just always there, and I'm like, why in the world? How in the world did that happen? And the only explanation that I got was, it was Jesus. It was God. Our ministry was called Unsung Heroes, and our duty there was to look for contacts. There was nobody in Bali, no contacts for the World Race Organization, and so we went out there to find some contacts there in Bali. And we were there for 1 week, and I've never had this happen to me. We were there for 1 week, and that Friday night we got in contact with a church called Kuda International Christian Church, and we met the pastor for the first time. Didn't know about the organization, didn't know about anything, and later on that night he took us out to McDonald's, and they have a McDonald's there, guys. And we started to talk to him and share our vision with him. And he allowed us, after our conversation, he allowed us to stay at his house for free. And while he was gone, so a stranger in his house for free. I was like we could rob. I said it a couple times. I'm like, dude, we can actually rob him, Doesn't know who we are. But we didn't, okay? But why is that significant for me? Because our budget was really low. We had $4 per person for a hotel or a hostel, because we didn't have a host. We were just there. They dropped us off and we had to go. And $4 per person. And we were in a touristy spot, so everything was expensive. So I was just mind blown. I was like, man, God, that's crazy that you would soften up his heart, and you would tell him to allow us to stay in his home. And that happened a couple of times, to be honest with you. It was just, every time it happened, I was just like, dang, that's awesome. Then another contact that we got in contact with, his name's Nebel. His ministry was 5 hours away from where we were at, and he also allowed us to stay at his home, in his home. And I remember the Lord telling me, fast for 2 days. Well, fast for 2 days. And 3 of our teammates, they went to on that trip with Nebel. And I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't know this at the time, but it's a policy of World Race that you eat once a day. And so I shared with Derek. He was our team leader, and I eventually got his blessing to be able to fast. And I remember we had to look for some hostels, and there was this alley full of hostels and hotels, and there was a lot of nice ones, and there was a lot of not nice ones. And I remember the Lord telling me when we went to go look for a place to stay, he says, go to every one of them and ask them how much they'll charge you. I was like, well, it's out of our budget. And I was like, okay, we'll go. So we went, and I told Derek, hey, let's go. And Derek said, okay. So we were asking, the front desk, and they would give us these high prices and stuff. And we went to this hostel where it was like a 4-star, in my opinion, 4-star hotel, maybe 3. And I remember, he was giving me the prices, and I felt the Lord telling me hey, tell him how much you can offer him. So I was like, all right, this is how much I can offer you. And he pauses and he says, okay, well, you can't have breakfast. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I was the treasurer at that time. And then he took us to this room, and it was like a small room and one bed. And I remember we walked in, and I was like, okay, we can make this work. One person could sleep on the bed, 3 of us could sleep on the floor, or maybe 2 on the bed. And he keeps on walking. He opens up this other door, and then there's another room with 2 queen-size beds. And we're like, whoa, this is awesome, The bed, like the restroom was nice. There was air conditioning. It was so hot over there, so air conditioning was a big thing. And I was just and I just kept on saying, are you sure A3 is the one you're going to give us for this amount of money? He's like, yeah, man. I was like, wow, God, that's awesome. And just God was just providing in that way. And it just showed me how faithful God is to us. Now, there's a lot of awesome and amazing stories that happen on the world race. And but I want to share with you a little bit of like the stuff that isn't normally shared, and that's me. It's about me and how I allowed my flesh to keep me from doing God's work. Keep me from being obedient from God to God. And it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday morning. It was our last Sunday at in South Africa, and I remember I had 100 rand in my pocket, which is equivalent to $7. And I was there, and we were there for one more week, and I felt the Lord telling me, "Hey, give this 100 rand to the offering bucket. Put it in the offering bucket." And I said, "But God, like this is it's 100 rand. Like, what am I going to use to eat, So we had $5 to eat per day. So it was $1 breakfast, $2 lunch, $2 dinner. And all I had was 100 rand, which equal to $7, which if you were to divide it, it'd be $1 a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I was just like, but God, like, this is all I have, And I just kept on arguing with him, back and forth. And let me tell you something. When you win the conversation with God or the argument with God, you usually lose. And when you lose the conversation, you win. It's kind of like weird, but that's the way it works. And let me tell you, church, I won the conversation. And at the end of the day, I lost. The offering bucket passed me by, and I kept my 100 rand. I kept my $7. And later on that day, a drummer comes to me and just spontaneously says, "Hey, you want to hang out with me and my family?" And I'm like, "Sure." And we go to his house, we have lunch, dinner, have a good conversation, and he drops me off at the Hillsong Church there in South Africa. And he hands me this envelope, and I'm like, "Oh, thank you, brother, God bless you. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you." And then I left. And I opened it up, and it was 1,000 rand. It was 90% more than what God was asking. And I said, "God, why would you do that? Like, I was disobedient. Why would you give me this cash?" And the scripture popped into my head that said, "Even when you're not faithful, I remain faithful." And that touched my heart, and that changed my life. Another story where I allowed my carnal my flesh to prevent me from doing something was on our way from South Africa to Swaziland. There was this little boy and this little girl sitting in front of us. We were in the bus, and I felt the Lord telling me, "Hey, speak to them." And I was like, the first time I was like, okay. So I started to converse with them, superficial. "Hey, where are you going? Where are you from?" And all of this. And then after that was over, I sat down, tried to relax, but I felt the Lord telling me, "Hey, continue to speak to him." And I was like, "No, I want to relax, And it's just pressing on my heart, speak to him. And I was like, "God, I want to pop in my headphones and just relax, I want to chill. I want to enjoy this ride." And there was this incident that happened. One of the girls, she brought apple vinegar, and it opened, and it got all over. And one of my other teammates, her name's Joanna, she came and she helped clean it up. And then after she cleaned it up, she started talking to the young boy and the little girl that the Lord asked me to talk to. And eventually she led them to the Lord. And, the next day was church, and there was another Hillsong Church there in South Africa it was really close to our bus station. And, she took them to the church, and, it's an awesome story. But let me tell you, at the time, I was very salty, if you guys know what that means. I was very salty because when they would talk about the story, because I was like, man, like I should have been the one who would share the story in this way. And it just reminded me of my disobedience to God, and it reminded me of just the failure not to like act in faith. And and that day I said, and you know what God said to me? He says, you didn't want to share, so because again I was pouting and stuff. It's like, God, he said, you didn't want to share, so I called Joanna up here to share, to share with him. You didn't want to do it, so I gave it to somebody who was willing to do it. So you ask for these things all the time, and then when it comes down to it, you're shying away from it. And I gave you first dibs. And he was telling me, like, time is running out, and people are in need of me. I cannot be waiting for you to stop lollying around. I need soldiers who are ready to share anytime, anywhere, to anyone. And I was like, man, Lord, forgive me. And before the race, it was really easy to think that coming on the race, I'd be this super Christian, that I'd come back home like Apostle Paul Jr., But what it made me realize is how messed up I am, and how much I need Jesus. And I mean, that's life changing for me. I went on the race expecting that bad habits would stop, bad addiction. And when I say addictions, I'm not talking about like the bad stuff. I was talking about technology, food, that kind of stuff. Okay, but I still dealt with them. I was hoping that going on the world race, like all of these things would be taken away. But I realized that it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter where you go. Want to know why? Because you'll still be there. The only being that can set you free from where you're at is Jesus Christ. Amen. And that was another life changing, for myself. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter where you're at. Doesn't matter if you try to run away from Colorado, from Greeley. It doesn't matter if you're trying to, if you're trying to find a new church or a new job. It doesn't make you a better Christian. It doesn't get rid of your issues. Jesus Christ does. And if we can have the pastoral staff come.